She stood in the rain, begging for work. The rain fell hard on the city streets. Cold water ran through the gutters. Lights blinked above the broken labor station. And there, just outside the metal gate, stood an alien widow. She didn't move, much. Her hands held a piece of cloth tightly around her shoulders. Her thin clothes were already soaked. Her skin, pale violet with soft patterns that glowed faintly, was turning gray from the cold. She looked at the guard at the gate. Her voice shook when she spoke. "Please, I just need a job." The guard didn't even look up from his datapad. "We don't hire aliens, go somewhere else." I can carry heavy things, I'm strong," she said. "Please, my child is hungry." The man glanced at her now. He made a face like he'd stepped in garbage. "Not my problem," he said. The widow's eyes dropped to the wet floor. Her hands trembled. She turned slowly and walked back to the small alley nearby, where her child waited under a plastic cover. The little one, no more than 5 cycles old, looked up with wide, tired eyes. "Did they give you work, Mama?" She smiled through the pain. "Not yet, little star, but soon, I promise." Behind them, hidden by the mist, a human man watched from inside a nearby tool shop. He stood near the door, arms crossed, watching silently. He had seen her here before, 3 days now, always in the morning, always asking for work, always walking back with nothing. Today, she looked weaker. Later, she tried another place, a food center. She cleaned her hands before entering, even wiped her feet. But before she could speak, the cook shouted, "Out! We don't need help, and we don't feed thieves." "I'm not a thief," she said quietly, but they didn't care. The door slammed in her face. She sat outside, hiding her tears, holding her child close. The little one whispered, "Why don't they like us?" The mother didn't answer. Her voice was gone. Only her heart broke a little more. Evening came. She returned to the labor station one last time. Her knees were shaking. Her lips were blue. The line was shorter now. Only a few men stood waiting. Big men, dirty uniforms, angry faces. She stepped in line. One man laughed. "Look, the bug lady's back." Another man shoved her from behind. "Go beg somewhere else." She didn't move. He shoved her harder. She fell to the ground, knees in the mud. Nobody helped. But someone watched. That same human, standing behind a broken window across the street. A man with worn gloves, grease on his arms, a mechanic's apron. His eyes followed her closely. He frowned. Finally, the guard shouted, "No more jobs today." The line broke apart. The alien widow stood slowly, soaked and shaking. She tried to hold her head high, but she was weak. Her child peeked out from behind a broken crate. They had nowhere to go. No food, no hope. She started to walk away, but then, footsteps behind her. She turned. It was him, the human. He stopped in front of her and looked into her tired eyes. For a moment he said nothing, just studied her face. "You been here 3 days?" he asked. She nodded. "You can clean?" "Yes," she whispered. "You listen well?" "Yes." He looked down at her child, then back at her. "I got a shop. It's messy, needs cleaning, tools, parts, machines." She blinked. "You'll give me work?" He nodded. "If you're serious, start tomorrow. Dawn. I don't pay much." Tears filled her eyes. "I'll come, I swear. Thank you." He nodded once more, turned, and walked away into the shadows. That night, she and her child shared the last of their stale food. But this time there was hope in her voice when she said, "Tomorrow, things will change." And somewhere, in the city full of cold hearts, one human had opened a door. Not just to his shop, but maybe to something more. Rejected again and again. The next morning came cold and gray. The alien widow stood outside the human's workshop at dawn. Her child stayed hidden under a warm cloth in a corner nearby. She knocked softly. The human opened the door. His name was Jacob. He didn't smile, but he stepped aside. "Come in," he said. She entered quietly, bowing her head in thanks. The shop smelled like oil, metal, and fire. Tools hung from every wall. Broken machines lay in piles. Jacob handed her a rag. "Start there. Don't touch anything glowing." She got to work. No questions, no complaints. For hours, she cleaned floors, wiped counters, sorted scrap metal. Her hands turned black with grease. Her arms ached, but she kept going. At noon, Jacob placed half a loaf of bread and a small bottle of clean water on the table. She stared at it like it was gold. "It's for you," he said, "and your kid." She blinked fast, trying to hold back tears. "Thank you." In the afternoon, Jacob stepped out to pick up some parts. She stayed behind, still cleaning. That's when two men from town passed by and looked into the workshop. One of them laughed. "Hey, is that the alien freak working inside?" The other man spat on the ground. "Why is a human giving that thing a job? Doesn't he know what they are?" They didn't come in, but they walked off talking loudly. The widow heard every word. That evening, Jacob returned and found his shop sparkling. "You did all this?" "Yes," she said softly. "And I organized the wires. The red ones were mixed with the blue." Jacob scratched his beard. "You did good. Come back tomorrow." She nodded. "I will." As she turned to leave, Jacob stopped her. "You live nearby?" She hesitated. "No home, just a place behind the old trash building." He looked away. "Be careful. People in this town don't forget easy, and they don't like different." She bowed her head. "I understand." The next day, she worked again. And the next. And the next. Soon some townspeople began to notice. An alien. Working in a human shop? Eating human food. It didn't sit well with them. One day, a well-dressed man entered the workshop. He didn't look at her, he looked at Jacob. "You're making a mistake," the man said. Jacob folded his arms. "What mistake?" "Giving that creature work. It sends the wrong message. People talk." Jacob stared back. "Let them talk." The man frowned. "You'll lose customers." Jacob didn't answer. The man looked at the widow now. "You don't belong here." She didn't say anything. Her hands shook, but she kept wiping the shelf in front of her. Later that night, someone threw a rock through the shop window. It smashed a light. Glass flew everywhere. Jacob and the alien widow ran to the sound. Outside, the street was empty. Only a note was left behind. "Freaks not welcome." Jacob picked it up, sighed, and looked at her. "You okay?" She nodded. "It's not the first time." Jacob didn't say much. He simply boarded up the window and went back to work. But something in him had changed. The next morning, something worse happened. The widow and her child were stopped by city patrol officers. One officer pulled out a scanner. "We got a report of an undocumented alien child in this district." She held her child close. "Please, don't take him. He's all I have." The officer smirked. "Then you shouldn't be here. Come with us." She cried out, but no one helped, until, "Hey!" Jacob's voice roared across the street. He ran toward them, hands raised. "She works for me," he said. "The child stays with her. You want trouble? Start with me." The officers stared at him. One of them frowned. "She's not your responsibility." "She is now." They muttered to each other, then turned and walked away. The widow fell to her knees, sobbing quietly. Jacob helped her stand. "Let's go. It's safe. For now." That night he opened the back of the shop. "You can sleep here," he said. "It's not much, but it's warm, and no one will find you." She looked at the small storage room. Just a cot, a blanket, and a heater. To her it looked like heaven. She turned to him, voice shaking. "Why are you helping me?" Jacob didn't smile. He just looked tired. "Because no one helped my mother either." He spoke to her, like she was a person, The morning was quiet. Rain had stopped, but clouds still covered the sky. Inside the back room of the workshop, the alien widow sat beside her child. She gently fixed the torn blanket, brushing her fingers through her son's soft hair for the first time in days. He was sleeping peacefully. She looked around the small space. No walls of gold, no fine furniture. But it had warmth. It had safety. It was enough. A knock at the door made her stand fast. Jacob entered with 2 mugs. One steamed with tea, the other was water. He placed them on the old table and stepped back. "I thought you might be cold," he said. She stared at the tea. It had a smell she didn't recognize. She didn't touch it. He noticed. "It's not poison," Jacob said, almost like a joke. "It's just tea. You ever had any?" She shook her head. Jacob leaned on the doorway. "Where are you from?" Her voice was soft. "From the outer rim, a planet called Sirava. It was green, before the war." "What happened?" She paused. Pain passed through her eyes. "They bombed our cities. My husband was in the defense force. He never came back." Jacob was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you miss it? Your home?" She nodded. "Every day." She took a sip of tea. It was strange, bitter, but warm. It felt kind. He watched her carefully. "You work hard. You don't complain. You're careful with tools. That's rare." "I only want to feed my child," she whispered. Jacob looked at the small sleeping boy. "What's his name?" She smiled faintly. "Ril. It means light after darkness in my language." "Fitting," Jacob said. Over the next few days, something began to change. Jacob didn't just tell her what to do. He began asking questions. "What do you think this part is? Do you know how to sort cables? Want to try fixing this wire?" She hesitated at first, but slowly she answered, then tried, then did. He gave simple instructions, clear, direct, and he never shouted. When she made a mistake, he didn't call her stupid. He just showed her the right way. No one had ever done that before. Not on this planet. Not since the war. One afternoon, while organizing metal scraps, she found a small pendant on the floor. Round. Old. A photo inside. A young girl with brown eyes. She held it up. "Your daughter?" Jacob turned from the workbench. He took the pendant gently, staring at it. "Yeah," he said. "She and her mom didn't survive the plague." "I'm sorry," she said. He nodded once, then turned away. No more words were needed. Later, Ril followed Jacob around the shop. At first, the boy was shy, but when Jacob gave him a small gear to hold, his eyes lit up. "You want to help your mom?" Jacob asked. Ril nodded quickly. "Then hold that tight. Don't drop it." The boy held it with both hands, proud like he was carrying treasure. The widow watched them, and something inside her began to heal. That evening, while cleaning the front counter, she looked up and said softly, "Why do you treat me like this?" Jacob looked confused. "What do you mean? You speak to me like I'm real, like I matter." "You are," he said simply. "You're a person. You work hard. You care for your kid. You're no different from me." "No one else sees that," she whispered. Jacob shrugged. "Then maybe they're blind." But peace never lasts long. Outside, eyes were still watching. A group of local men stood at the corner talking in angry whispers. "She's still working there?" "Every day." We warned him. He didn't listen. "What do we do now?" One of them lit a smoke. "We remind him, this town doesn't welcome outsiders." Back in the shop, the alien mother tucked her child into bed. She looked at the cot, the walls, the tools, all given by a man who didn't owe her anything. She whispered to herself, maybe kindness still lives in humans. She didn't know. Trouble was coming soon. She works until her hands bleed. The morning started before sunrise, before the city lights turned off, before the world noticed her. The alien widow woke early, washed her face with cold water, and kissed her child's forehead. Then she tied back her thin silver hair, wrapped her scarf, and stepped into the workshop like she was stepping onto a battlefield. Jacob didn't tell her to come that early. She came because she wanted to. She wanted to prove she was more than just an unwanted alien. That week, Jacob had accepted a big job repairing a broken mining drone, heavy and rusted. He needed help sorting the old tools and cleaning out oil tanks. The widow volunteered before he even asked. "You sure?" Jacob asked. "These machines are dangerous, oil burns. Parts are heavy." She nodded. "I can do it." He gave her gloves. Old, gloves too big. But she wore them anyway. All day she worked. Grease covered her arms. The thick oil got into her nails, her clothes, her skin. The smell burned her nose, but she never stopped. The sharp corners of metal scratched her wrists. The acid tank she cleaned made her hands sting. By evening, her fingers were raw. By night, her gloves were torn. Rill peeked from the back room and saw his mother sitting on a stool, staring at her hands. They were shaking, bleeding. He ran to her, with his little blanket, and wrapped it around her palms. "Don't work anymore, Mama," he whispered. "Please." She smiled weakly. "Just a little more. For you." The next day, she returned again, even weaker, even slower, but still working. Jacob saw her wounds. "You didn't have to push that hard." "I need this," she said. "You need to rest," he replied. But she didn't rest. She couldn't. For her, this job was more than work. It was life. That night, Jacob left the shop for a supply run. While he was gone, 2 men appeared at the gate. Locals. They banged on the door. She peeked out. One of them shouted, "Hey, alien, come out." She froze. The second man threw a bottle. It hit the door and shattered. Fire spilled across the ground. Burning, bright and fast. She grabbed her child and backed away. The shop was old, full of flammable wires, cloths, and gas. The fire licked the sides of the walls. She had to act. Now. With shaking hands, she picked up the fire extinguisher Jacob kept near the bench. She aimed at the flames and sprayed. Smoke filled the shop. Sparks jumped across metal. But she didn't stop. Coughing, burning, eyes full of tears. She fought the fire like it was a beast attacking her child, and in the end, she won. Jacob returned, to see black smoke rising from the roof. He ran, broke open the door. Inside, he found her lying on the floor, gasping for air. Her child clung to her. Ash covered everything, but the workshop still stood. He helped them outside, poured water over them, wrapped them in blankets. "You saved the shop," he whispered. She nodded slowly. I didn't want it to burn. Not after all you gave me." Jacob looked at her bleeding hands, her burned sleeves, her torn gloves. "You're stronger than most people I know," he said. She gave a weak smile. "I have to be. I'm a mother." The next day he gave her new gloves, not old ones, new, made for her size. She held them close like a gift from the stars. But the real gift was something else. Respect. That night, Jacob stood outside his shop and said aloud for everyone passing by, to hear, "This woman saved my business. She's not a freak. She's not a problem. She's a hero." Some listened, some walked away, but a few, just a few, nodded slowly. Maybe not everyone in the city was heartless. Maybe change had begun. They tried to take her child. The sun was shining, but the warmth didn't reach her heart. The alien widow swept the floor of the workshop with slow, careful strokes. Her hands still ached from the fire last week. But she said nothing. She smiled when Jacob passed by and even hummed softly while cleaning. Rill, her small son, played nearby with old screws and wires. He had built a little robot from scrap. It had no eyes, but it still made him laugh. For a few days, everything had felt safe. Too safe. The peace shattered at noon. 3 city patrol guards entered the shop without knocking. Their boots stomped. on the floor like war drums. One of them held a scanner, another had cuffs. Jacob stepped forward fast. "Can I help you?" The tallest guard looked around and spotted the widow. "That's her, the undocumented alien." Jacob frowned. "She works here, legally. She's not the problem," the guard said coldly. "It's the child." The widow froze. Her hand tightened around the broom. The guard held up the scanner. "This child was not registered during planet entry. He has no ID. That makes him property of the state," she gasped. "He's not property. He's my son." The guard shrugged. "Then you should have registered him. According to Code 73Z, he's to be taken into protection. Alien children are to be raised under supervision." She stepped in front of Rill. "Please, he's just a child. He's done nothing wrong." Another guard grabbed her arm. Rill screamed, "Mama!" Jacob moved fast. He stepped between them and the boy. "Back off. You're not taking him." "He's illegal," one guard growled. "He's a kid," Jacob shouted. "He has a name, a home. He's done nothing to anyone." The guards hesitated. One whispered, "Let's not do this here. Too many eyes." But the leader nodded. "We'll be back, with the full order." They turned and left, but they had made their message clear. That night the widow didn't sleep. She held Rill close, rocking him slowly in the back room. "What if they take me too?" he whispered. "They won't," she said. "I'll never let them." But her hands were shaking. Outside, Jacob paced the shop, angry, thinking, planning. He had helped many people fix machines. But now, he had to help protect a family. The next morning, the widow was gone. Jacob panicked when he didn't see her. Then he heard a noise in the alley. She stood there, talking to a cloaked figure, an alien from her world. She held something in her hand, a small data chip. When Jacob called out, the figure vanished. The widow turned, startled. "You leaving?" he asked quietly. "No," she said. "I was asking for papers, fake ones. For my son." Jacob looked at her. "It's dangerous. If they catch you, I'll go to prison, I know." He stepped forward. "There's another way." She blinked. "What way?" He pointed at Rill, who was peeking from behind a barrel. "Let me register him as mine." Silence. The wind passed between them. "You would do that?" she whispered. Jacob nodded. "It's not just about law. It's about what's right, and no one, no law, should tear a mother and son apart." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why?" she asked. "Because you matter, and so does he." That afternoon, they went to the city records. Jacob signed the papers. The widow stood beside him, silent but strong. The officer looked confused. "This boy doesn't look like your blood." "He's mine in every way that counts," Jacob said. The man paused, then stamped the file. "It's done." But the danger hadn't passed. When the guards returned 2 days later, they carried a court order. "We're here for the alien child." Jacob showed them the document. "He's mine now," he said. "Registered, approved." The guards checked the stamp. They looked shocked, then furious. "This isn't over," one of them said. "No," Jacob said. "It's just beginning." That night, the widow tucked Rill into bed and stepped outside. Jacob sat near the fire barrel. She stood beside him, silent. After a moment, she said, "No one has ever fought for us before." He looked at her. "Then I guess it's about time someone did." He offers her a new life. The rain returned that night, soft at first, then heavier. It tapped on the tin roof of the workshop like a gentle song. Inside, the widow sat near the heater with Rill in her lap. The small child was asleep, warm and safe, for now. She held him close and stared at the flickering light. The shop smelled like firewood, metal, and oil. But it was the only place on this planet that ever felt like home. A knock came at the side door. She stood up slowly and opened it. Jacob stood there with a strange object in his hand, a folded piece of paper. "Come with me," he said. He led, her and Rill outside, down a path behind the workshop. Rain dripped from the rooftops. Lights flickered above the alley. But they walked on. He stopped beside a small storage building. Metal door. Rusted hinges. "I've been working on this," he said quietly. He opened the door. Inside was a room, clean, dry, warm. A small cot, a table, 2 chairs, a heater, a window with clean glass. And next to the cot, a small handmade toy for Rill. She stepped inside, unable to speak. "I know it's not much," Jacob said. "But it's yours." She turned to him slowly. "What do you mean?" "This is your place now. No more hiding in the back. No more sleeping on floors." She stared at him like he was a ghost. "But why would you do this?" Jacob didn't smile. He just looked tired and honest. "Because everyone needs a beginning, even on a broken planet like this." Rill touched the toy on the cot and smiled. "Is this really for us?" Jacob nodded. "Built it from old drone parts. Might not fly, but it's yours." The widow sat down on the bed. Her eyes shimmered with tears. She had run for years, from war, from hunger, from hate. And now, someone had built her a home. Later that night, she found Jacob repairing a broken fuel pump. She watched him quietly for a moment, then asked, "Was it your daughter's room?" Jacob paused. He looked down, nodded once. "Yeah. Years ago." She sat beside him on the floor. "Thank you for giving it to us." He didn't speak right away. Then he said, "I think she would have liked you." The next day, things changed. Rill began helping around the shop more, carrying small parts, sorting bolts by color, cleaning shelves. The widow smiled more. Her shoulders weren't always tight. Her voice didn't always tremble. Jacob gave her real work, assembly tasks, soldering wires, fixing circuit boards. He taught her slowly, gently, and she learned fast. One evening, while working side by side, Jacob looked at her and said, "You've got skill. Ever think of becoming a technician?" She looked shocked. "Me? But I'm alien?" he interrupted. "So, doesn't mean you can't build a life." She looked at her hands. Once bloody and shaking, now steady, capable. "I never thought I'd be allowed to dream again." He gave her a small smile. "Then start dreaming now." That night, Rill ran to her with something in his hand, a small drawing, made with old ink. It showed the 3 of them, Jacob, the widow, and Rill, standing in front of the shop. He had written one word under it in big, careful letters. "Family." She stared at the paper, then hugged her son tightly. Later, as she stepped outside and looked up at the stars, Jacob joined her. She whispered, "I don't know what I did to deserve this." He said, "You kept going. You never gave up. That's what makes you worthy." She looked at him. Softly, she asked, "And what about you? Why are you still alone?" Jacob looked away, his voice quiet. "Maybe I was just waiting for someone who wouldn't leave." She didn't reply, but she didn't step away either. They stood in the rain again, but this time, together. "You gave me hope, human." The town was silent when the fire started. It wasn't from Jacob's shop. It was from the other side of the street, a rival mechanic's warehouse owned by men who had always hated the alien widow's presence. Smoke curled into the sky. Sirens howled in the distance, panic spread. Jacob grabbed his coat and ran outside. The widow followed, holding Rill's hand tightly. "What happened?" she asked. Jacob stared at the flames. "I think someone blamed us for everything." Suddenly a stone flew past them. It hit the workshop wall, hard. Voices shouted in the distance, "Traitor!" Alien lover. Burn them out! Jacob stepped in front of the widow and her child. They're coming here, he said quietly. But before the mob reached them, something unexpected happened. A few townspeople, quiet ones, the kind who watched but never spoke, stood in front of the shop, a baker, a retired soldier, a young mother with her baby. One by one, they blocked the path. She works hard, the baker said. She saved this town from that drone fire last week, the soldier added. She helped fix my son's hover chair, the mother whispered. The mob hesitated, confused, uncertain. Jacob stepped forward and raised his voice. You want to burn my shop? He shouted. Then you burn me first. But I won't let you harm her. Not after everything she's survived. Ito. Widow stepped beside him. I didn't come here to take, she said, voice trembling but strong. I came to live, to protect my son, and all I ever asked was for a chance. She looked at the angry faces, then at the kind ones, and finally at Jacob. You gave me that chance. You gave me hope. The mob turned away slowly. Some walked off. Some stayed behind, faces full of shame. The danger passed, but something had changed forever. Weeks later, peace returned. Rill was enrolled in a local school. The widow wore new gloves and ran the shop beside Jacob. They worked like a team, equal, steady, smiling. The townspeople no longer looked at her with fear. Some even greeted her by name. One night under a quiet sky, Jacob and the widow sat outside watching the stars. She spoke softly. On my homeworld, stars were sacred. We believed they were the souls of those we lost. Jacob looked up. Then your husband's probably watching. She smiled. I hope he sees his son safe, happy, whole. Jacob turned to her. And what about you? Are you whole again? She nodded slowly. Almost. He took her hand. Silence settled between them, not awkward, but peaceful, like a new beginning. Rill's laughter echoed from inside. He was building another small machine, with both alien and human parts, strong, beautiful, complete, just like their family. The widow looked at Jacob once more. I lost everything, she whispered. But you gave me work, shelter, respect. You gave me something greater than all of that. He asked gently. What? She squeezed his hand. Hope. The end.